The unexpected signal. The silence of space was suddenly shattered by a mysterious signal. It wasn't a signal from any known civilization. No, this one was different. It was a deep, pulsating sound that echoed across the vast expanse of the galaxy, something that had never been heard before. The Galactic Council's best scientists scrambled to decode the message, but all they could tell was that it came from Earth. Earth, a planet that most had written off as insignificant. The signal was strange and unlike any other. It wasn't a typical transmission used by humans for communication. It was far too complex. The message was encrypted, layered in ways that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. The ancient races of the galaxy, those that had been around for eons, grew uneasy. They had their eyes on Earth for a reason, and that reason had nothing to do with humanity's growing power. The signal spread quickly. It wasn't just a broadcast to the outer systems. It was a warning. The first message was clear, if not cryptic. Earth is no longer what it once was. These words sent shockwaves throughout the Council. To the galaxy's oldest species, Earth had always been just a small, insignificant planet. The humans were a nuisance, a species that had never held any real power. They had always been on the fringes of the galaxy, a curiosity at best. But this signal, this warning, changed everything. The Council's leaders gathered in secret. The oldest species, who had seen countless worlds rise and fall, looked toward Earth with something new: fear. The signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was almost as if the message was trying to say that Earth was no longer a simple world with simple beings. It was now a force to be reckoned with. And that force was not just human. One of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful species, the Xarnex, the first to dominate the stars, had always considered Earth a distant, unimportant world. But the signal was different. It was more than a warning. It was a sign that something dangerous was awakening on Earth. The Xarnex had kept their distance from Earth for centuries, knowing that something ancient was hidden beneath its surface. But this new signal was impossible to ignore. The Xarnex leader, Karis, was the first to speak. His deep voice reverberated through the council room as he looked out across the faces of the galaxy's most ancient beings. This signal cannot be ignored. Earth, something is changing there. Something that even we fear. We've always known that Earth is hiding something, but we never expected this. A younger species, the Arcturans, who had long been allies of the Xarnex, exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard rumors of the ancient power hidden beneath Earth's surface, but they had dismissed them as myths, stories passed down through generations. However, now that the signal had been received, they couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Earth was no longer a simple, defenseless planet. There was something beneath the surface, something that even the oldest species feared. The council members fell silent. They all had questions, but none had answers. What was it? What had been hidden on Earth for centuries? Why was it suddenly making its presence known? The question that gnawed at everyone's mind was the same. If Earth had awakened something so powerful, what would it mean for the rest of the galaxy? On Earth, no one knew the magnitude of the events unfolding in the stars above. Humanity was blissfully unaware that the galaxy's most ancient species were now turning their gaze toward their world. But it wouldn't be long before they discovered the truth. The signal wasn't just a message, it was a call. Something had stirred beneath the surface of Earth, something ancient, something alive. As the days passed, the signal grew stronger, more insistent, until the sky itself seemed to hum with an energy that hadn't been felt in centuries. People on Earth began to notice the changes. Strange occurrences became more common. Unusual weather patterns, unexpected power surges, and whispers of ancient myths that had been long forgotten. The world was changing. As the signal continued to pulse through the galaxy, the Xarnex made their decision. They would not allow Earth to remain as it was. They knew that they had to act quickly before whatever lay beneath the surface of Earth awoke fully. If they didn't, the balance of the galaxy could be disrupted in ways that no one could predict. The Xarnex had seen civilizations fall before, but this was something different. Something that could change everything. The Xarnec fleet, the largest and most powerful in the galaxy, began its preparations. They would move toward Earth, silently, in the dead of night, before any of the humans or other species could react. It was time to investigate, and, if necessary, neutralize whatever threat Earth posed. But they knew it wouldn't be easy. The signal had revealed more than they had bargained for. It was a warning, but it was also a challenge. Whoever or whatever had awakened on Earth was not afraid to fight back. As the Tarnek ships made their way toward Earth, a quiet fear began to settle over the galaxy. The fate of Earth had been sealed. The galaxy's oldest species feared what lay beneath the surface of the planet, and now they would find out just what it was. Would Earth's hidden power be enough to protect its people, or would it spell the beginning of the end for everything? In the silence of space, the journey had begun. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful species, the Xarnex, had already begun their journey towards Earth. Their ships, massive and silent, moved through space like shadows, invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. Their mission was clear: investigate, and if necessary, neutralize the unknown force that had awakened on Earth. But as they traveled deeper into the unknown, they realized something. Earth was no longer the primitive planet they had once thought it to be. The signal had been the first sign, but it wasn't the last. Across the vastness of space, every system, every species that had even a passing interest in Earth began to take notice. Something was stirring, and it was much bigger than the Xarnex had anticipated. Back on Earth, humanity continued to live as they always had, unaware of the gathering storm in the stars. Scientists were baffled by the strange occurrences happening all around the globe. The weather was becoming more erratic, with storms of unbelievable intensity forming out of nowhere. Ancient artifacts buried deep in the earth began to hum with energy, their long-forgotten secrets starting to awaken. The world seemed on the edge of something, a change that couldn't be ignored. In the quiet corners of the world, a select few had begun to notice these oddities. A group of scholars, historians, and archaeologists who had spent their lives studying Earth's forgotten past were the first to piece together the truth. The signals, the energy fluctuations, and the strange artifacts all pointed to one thing. Earth was no longer just a planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was a hub for something much greater. Professor Elena Vasquez, one of the leading archaeologists on Earth, had spent years researching the ancient civilizations that once called Earth home. She had uncovered countless artifacts from civilizations that predated recorded history, but none of her findings had prepared her for what was happening now. She stood in her lab, staring at an ancient stone tablet, its surface etched with markings that she had never seen before. The markings were familiar, yet alien, an odd combination of human and something far older. "Something's happening," Elena muttered to herself. She could feel it in her bones. The air around her was thick with energy, the kind of energy she had only read about in ancient texts. She reached out and touched the tablet. And for a moment, the world around her seemed to shimmer, as if the fabric of reality itself was beginning to unravel. At the same time, the Xarnex were preparing to make their move. Their fleet, now just days away from Earth, was operating in complete silence. The Council had given them strict orders. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. They had no idea what they were walking into, and they had no intention of underestimating whatever was on Earth. The last thing the Xarnex wanted was to reveal their presence too soon, but they also understood the importance of gathering intelligence first. Karis, the leader of the Xarnec fleet, stood at the helm of his flagship, his cold eyes scanning the stars before him. The pulse of the signal had grown stronger as they neared Earth, and a sense of unease began to spread among the fleet. Karis had lived for centuries, seen countless worlds fall, and had never experienced fear. But there was something different about Earth. "What is it?" he muttered, almost to himself. "What are you hiding?" The answer, however, was not something he could comprehend. The galaxy's oldest species had long feared the power that was hidden beneath Earth's surface, but no one had truly known the depth of this power until now. Earth had always been a backwater world, a place where only the most insignificant life forms thrived. But now, something ancient, something forgotten, was awakening, and the Xarnex knew that they couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, in the halls of the Galactic Council, the discussion was growing heated. The signal from Earth had changed, and with it, the urgency to act. The message had become more direct, less cryptic. Something or someone on Earth was reaching out, not just to the galaxy, but to its oldest species. The council members debated among themselves, some fearing the worst, while others insisted on a more cautious approach. "The signal is not just a warning," said Seldza, the leader of the Arcturans, a younger species that had once been allies to the Xarnex. "It's an invitation." "An invitation to what?" Karis asked, his voice cold with suspicion. "To something far greater than any of us can comprehend," Xelza replied, his eyes dark with concern. "The power that is waking on Earth, it's not just the humans. There's something else. Something older, something that has been hidden for eons." The silence in the room was palpable. The council knew that if Earth had awakened something ancient, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever, and they had no idea what kind of force they were up against. Back on Earth, the signs of change were becoming impossible to ignore. As Professor Vasquez and her colleagues delved deeper into their research, they discovered something terrifying. The ancient power beneath Earth's surface was not just a relic of the past, it was alive. It had been waiting, dormant for thousands of years, and now it was stirring. The legends of old, the whispers of gods and ancient civilizations, were all true, and humanity had unknowingly become the key to unlocking this power. As the days passed, the strange events continued to escalate. Earth's once peaceful sky grew darker, as if the planet itself was preparing for something monumental. The Xarnic fleet, now only hours away from Earth, braced for impact. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew one thing. This was not a threat they could simply eliminate. Earth was no longer a world they could ignore. And so, the stage was set for an epic confrontation, one that would determine the fate of Earth, the galaxy, and all the species that had once overlooked this small, insignificant planet. The question was simple: would the power of Earth's ancient past be enough to protect humanity from the galaxy's oldest and most feared species? Or would Earth's awakening be its final act? The answer, however, was still hidden, waiting in the darkness. As the Xarnic fleet neared Earth, the sense of unease within their ranks grew. Despite their centuries of dominance across the galaxy, they had never encountered anything quite like this. The energy surrounding Earth was like nothing they had ever felt before. An ancient power pulsing from deep within the planet, hidden for millennia, now stirring. Karis, the fleet's leader, paced nervously on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes scanning the star-filled void. The signal had grown stronger over the past few hours, a pulse that reverberated through the vast emptiness of space. The Xarnex knew that this wasn't just a warning. It was a beckoning, a call that had traveled across the galaxy to draw them here, to Earth. "What is this power?" Karis asked aloud, his voice filled with frustration. Who could have hidden something so dangerous for so long? The silent, towering figure of his first officer, Malgur, stood beside him, watching the sensors. "Whatever it is," Malgur replied in his deep, guttural voice, "it's not just the humans. They're only the surface of what's waking. The signal is older than anything we know. It has been dormant. Until now." Karis paused, taking a deep breath. His mind raced. The Xarnex were the galaxy's oldest species, feared by all. Yet this was different. They had faced enemies before, powerful ones, but none who held the power that seemed to rise from the very core of a planet itself. "Prepare the fleet," Karis ordered. "We're going in. We need to learn what's hiding there, before it learns about us." Meanwhile, back on Earth, The situation was escalating in ways that even the scientists could no longer explain. The strange occurrences had turned into events that threatened to unravel reality itself. Entire sections of ancient ruins that had been buried for centuries were suddenly glowing with an otherworldly light. Machines that should have been lost to time hummed back to life, their purpose forgotten by all but the most ancient of texts. And the once quiet whispers of humanity's past began to grow louder, forming into something more coherent, more powerful. Professor Elena Vasquez stood in her lab, her eyes wide with disbelief. In her hands, she held an artifact, an ancient stone tablet, no bigger than her palm. But its surface had changed. The markings on it, once mere symbols, were now shifting, rearranging themselves as though they had a life of their own. They glowed faintly in the dim light of her office, like tiny stars. "What is happening?" Elena whispered, her heart racing. She had studied ancient civilizations her entire life. But this was beyond her understanding. Across the world, similar events were occurring. Archaeologists, researchers, and historians were all uncovering the same truth. Earth was not as it seemed. And something ancient was waking beneath their feet. Elsewhere, a group of scientists in a high-tech facility near the Arctic Circle were studying the increasing intensity of the Earth's magnetic fields. The readings were off the charts, unlike anything they had ever seen. They had originally thought it was some sort of natural anomaly, but now they knew better. There was no natural explanation for what was happening. "We have to tell them," one scientist said urgently, looking at his colleagues. "Whatever it is, it's not just happening on Earth. It's a signal, a call to something or someone." But no one could explain what that call was for or who would answer it. As the days passed, the pulse of the ancient power continued to grow. The world began to feel its effects in strange ways. Disorienting tremors, electrical outages, strange lights in the sky that couldn't be explained by any known phenomenon. The world's governments scrambled to figure out what was happening. But the truth was, they were as lost as everyone else. Meanwhile, the Xarnik fleet had arrived, their massive ships now in orbit around Earth. Karis stood on the bridge of his ship, looking down at the planet below. His fleet had been silent, watching, waiting. They had no idea what they were facing, but they knew one thing. Earth was no longer a simple backward world. "This is it," Karis said, his voice firm. "Prepare to make contact. We need to understand what we're dealing with, and we need to do it quickly. The longer we wait, the stronger it will become." The fleet's silence shattered as the ships moved into position, their advanced technology cloaking them from Earth's sensors. They had been careful to remain unseen, biding their time, but now they had no choice. The signal was undeniable, and it was only a matter of time before humanity discovered the truth. The fleet moved closer to the planet, invisible to all but the most sensitive scanners. Yet, despite their attempts at secrecy, something on Earth was aware of their presence. As they descended through the atmosphere, the energy levels spiked once more, and for the first time, the Xarniks could feel it. A presence, ancient and powerful, rising up from the very core of the planet. Back on Earth, Professor Vasquez stared out the window of her lab, the lights of the city flickering eerily below her. She knew that something had changed. The Earth was alive in a way that it had never been before, and humanity was about to learn the truth of its ancient past. And as the Xarnik fleet descended upon Earth, ready to face whatever this ancient power might be, the world stood on the edge of something that would change it forever. The final test had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The balance of the galaxy and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The ancient power had awakened, and now the galaxy's oldest species feared the very world they had once thought weak and insignificant. The Xarnik fleet hovered silently above Earth, their vast ships casting long shadows over the oceans and continents below. From their vantage point in space, the planet appeared ordinary, just another world in the universe. But Karis, the fleet commander, could feel the presence of something far from ordinary. His hands trembled slightly as he watched the planet through the massive viewport of his flagship. It was the feeling that something ancient, something deeply connected to the fabric of the universe itself, was stirring. The energy they had detected was not a natural phenomenon. It was something far older, far more dangerous. "The pulse is growing stronger," Malgur, his first officer, muttered, his gaze fixed on the swirling data streams before him. "It's almost as if it's alive." Karras narrowed his eyes. "Alive? What do you mean by that?" Malgur turned to face him. "I've never seen anything like this before. It's almost as if the planet itself is calling out, or perhaps protecting something hidden beneath the surface." Karras stood still for a moment, taking in the implications of Malgur's words. The Xarnax were the galaxy's oldest species, feared and respected by many. But this was something else entirely. They had come to conquer, to claim, but now it felt as though they were the ones being watched. "Prepare the landing teams," Karras ordered, his voice low and determined. "We'll make our descent. We need to understand what we're up against." Back on Earth, the situation was escalating. The strange occurrences had become too frequent to ignore. The magnetic fields continued to intensify, disrupting communication systems around the world. Satellites were knocked off course, and military installations reported unusual activity. People spoke of strange lights in the sky, moving in patterns that defied logic. Governments were scrambling, but no one knew how to deal with what was happening. Professor Elena Vasquez stared at the readings on her screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. The artifacts she had been studying, the same ones that had been inexplicably awakening, now pulsed with a strange rhythmic energy. They were no longer just objects of interest. They were parts of something much larger, something ancient. And now, they were beginning to reveal their secrets. "There's something here," Elena whispered to herself, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Something that's been hidden for millennia. And it's starting to awaken." Her mind raced as she thought about the implications. What if this wasn't just a coincidence? What if the awakening of these artifacts was part of a much larger, much more dangerous puzzle? What if Earth had been unknowingly sitting on the key to something greater than anyone could have imagined? Far beneath the surface of the planet, deep within the forgotten caverns of ancient Earth, the energy continued to build. It was a force that had been lying dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Now that moment had come, the vibrations spread through the Earth's crust, like ripples in a pond, traveling through hidden channels that had not seen the light of day for millennia. These were the remnants of an ancient civilization that had once dominated the planet. Humans, yes, but not the humans known today. These were the ancestors of modern humanity, beings far more advanced, possessing knowledge and power that had long been lost to time. And now, that power was waking up. In orbit, the Xarnax fleet began their descent to Earth, their massive ships cutting through the atmosphere with ease. The sudden storm of electromagnetic interference made it difficult to navigate, but the Xarnax were nothing if not prepared. Their technology was the pinnacle of galactic engineering, capable of overcoming any obstacle. The flagship touched down first, its colossal form settling onto the surface with a low rumble that echoed for miles. Karras stepped down onto the planet's surface, his boots crunching on the alien soil. The air was thick, heavy with the strange energy that had been building for so long. Every step he took felt like an intrusion on something far older, far more powerful than anything the Xarnax had ever faced. "This place, it feels different," Karras said quietly, looking around at the barren landscape. The once mighty Xarnax leader, usually so confident, now felt a sense of vulnerability. "There's a force here, something that's been waiting." Malgur, standing beside him, agreed. "The planet, it knows we're here." They weren't alone. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the planet, Karras and his team uncovered ruins. Ancient structures buried beneath the earth, their purpose unknown but unmistakably familiar. The markings on the walls, the symbols etched into the stones, seemed to stir something deep within Karis, something he couldn't explain. "This is a place of power," Malgur muttered, his voice filled with awe. "These markings, they speak of a civilization far beyond ours." But as the Xarnex delved deeper into the forgotten depths of Earth, they began to uncover the truth. The ancient civilization that once inhabited this planet was not just any race. They were humanity's ancestors, a people who had long since vanished, leaving only the echoes of their existence behind. And the power they had left behind, hidden deep within the planet, was something that even the Xarnex feared. This wasn't just a war for control of Earth. It was a war for the very power that lay beneath its surface. Back on Earth's surface, Alina continued to study the artifacts, her mind racing with possibilities. The strange symbols were becoming clearer now, almost as if they were trying to communicate. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. "What is it that you're trying to tell me?" she muttered under her breath. "What are you warning me about?" Then it hit her, the answer she had been searching for all along. The Xarnex weren't just coming to conquer Earth. They were coming for something far more powerful, something that had been hidden beneath the surface for centuries. And if they found it, the consequences would be devastating, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. As Alina realized the gravity of the situation, she knew that she had only one choice. She had to stop them. But how? And at what cost? The stakes were higher than ever, and humanity's survival was now in the hands of a few. The ancient power had been awakened, and now, the Xarnex were playing a dangerous game. Their thirst for power had brought them to Earth, but they had no idea what they were truly up against. The clock was ticking, and the truth was just beginning to unfold. The Xarnex fleet's commanders had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated Earth's power, a power that lay dormant for centuries, now awakened. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, one that the galaxy's oldest species had never encountered before. They had been warned, by Alina, by the artifacts, and by the strange signals that had grown stronger each day. But none of them had anticipated the force they would soon face. Karis, the fleet commander, stood at the entrance of the largest cavern they had uncovered. The walls around him seemed to hum with life, almost as if the place itself were aware of their presence. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the mysterious symbols carved into the rock. Each one told a story of an ancient civilization, but they were not the story of any species he knew. These markings spoke of power, of destruction, and of something far greater than anything he had ever dreamed. "Commander," Malgur said in a low voice, stepping up beside him. "These symbols, they're unlike anything we've encountered. It's as if this place has been waiting for us." Karis clenched his fists. "This is not what we came for," he muttered, turning away from the markings. "We came for control, for resources, not this. This is something far beyond our understanding." Malgur hesitated. What if it's a trap? What if we're meant to find this power? The thought made Karis uneasy, but he could not deny it. The feeling that something was pulling them deeper into the heart of the planet was undeniable. It was like a force beyond their comprehension, an ancient will that had been dormant for far too long. As much as they wanted to believe they were in control, the truth was something else entirely. "Keep moving," Karis ordered, his voice firm. "We can't back down now. We have to find out what this power is before it's too late." Back on Earth, Alina had been working tirelessly to decode the strange symbols. The more she studied, the more the pieces began to fit together. She was no longer just dealing with ancient humans. No, this was something much more complex. These ancestors had harnessed energy in ways no one had imagined. Energy that had been forgotten, lost to time, and now it was stirring once again. Her research led her to a shocking discovery. The artifacts she had been studying were not merely relics. They were pieces of a larger mechanism, a machine designed to keep the planet's power in check. That machine, Alina realized, was built to protect Earth from forces far beyond any civilization's reach. It had been constructed to keep the planet's deepest secrets safe, ensuring that no one, no matter how powerful, could tap into the energy hidden beneath the surface. The Xarnex had no idea what they were dealing with. They thought they could conquer, thought they could control, but they had walked into a trap far older than their empire. If they succeeded in finding the power hidden below Earth's surface, they would awaken something that could bring ruin to the galaxy. But Elena also knew that it wasn't just the Xarnex who were in danger. If the power of the ancients were unleashed, it could obliterate everything in its path, including humanity. It was a risk no one could afford to take. She sat back in her chair, staring at the glowing screen in front of her. The data was clear. The awakening had begun. There was no going back now. Karis and his team descended deeper into the cavern. The air grew colder with each step, the faint hum of the energy growing louder, reverberating through their bones. The walls of the cave began to pulse with a strange rhythm, as though the entire planet was alive, breathing beneath their feet. "This is it," Malgur whispered, his eyes wide with awe. "We found it. The heart of Earth." Karis took a step forward, his eyes scanning the room. It was unlike any place he had ever seen. A massive chamber filled with technology far beyond anything the Xarnex had ever encountered. It was ancient, yet advanced, a fusion of organic and mechanical that seemed almost otherworldly. "What is this place?" Karis muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. What did they leave behind? The chamber was massive, its walls adorned with glowing symbols and intricate designs. In the center, a large crystalline structure stood, pulsating with an eerie light. It was the source of the energy, the heartbeat of the planet. Karis could feel the power coursing through the air, pulling at his very soul. "This is the power we came for," Karis said, his voice low with both awe and fear. "This is what we've been searching for." But as his hand reached toward the crystal, a sudden deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The ground beneath them shook violently, and a strange energy barrier flared to life around the crystal. It was as if the very planet was rejecting their presence, trying to push them away. "Retreat," Karis barked, but it was too late. The barrier grew stronger, the energy swirling around them in a vortex of light and power. The Xarnex tried to break through, but the force was overwhelming. Karis realized with growing dread that they had made a critical error. They were not in control anymore. Whatever power this place held, it had its own will, and it was not interested in sharing it with them. Elena watched as the data streamed in. The ancient energy was reacting, and not just in the caverns beneath the surface. It was spreading, resonating with the artifacts around the world. The pulse was growing stronger, more intense, and she knew that the Xarnex were about to learn just how powerful Earth truly was. She could feel the planet's ancient will, the force that had been lying dormant for millennia, awakening with a vengeance. And with it, the stakes had never been higher. Humanity's survival now depended on stopping the Xarnex from unlocking the power that could destroy everything. But could they? Could they stop an ancient force that even the galaxy's oldest species feared? The clock was ticking. The unseen forces of Earth had been awakened, and their message was clear. Do not underestimate what lies beneath. Harris stumbled backward as the energy field flared, pushing him and his soldiers away. The once still cavern now roared with the force of an ancient storm, the crystals pulsing brighter with each passing second. The air thickened, making it harder to breathe, as if the very atmosphere was resisting their intrusion. His mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other. They had come for power, for domination, but now they were just intruders in a place they didn't understand. "Retreat," Karis ordered, his voice trained against the force pulling at him. But even as his command rang out, it felt like the ground itself was holding them in place, as if the planet itself was unwilling to let them go. The soldiers hesitated, caught between fear and duty. The world beneath them seemed to be alive, its power pulsing through their bones. A deep, guttural sound echoed from the walls, like a warning, but the Xarnex were too far gone. They had already broken through Earth's defenses. Now, they would face the consequences. One of Karis's officers, Malgur, gripped his arm, trying to drag him away from the crystal. "Commander, we cannot win this. The power, it's too much. We need to get out now." Karis wrenched his arm free, pushing against the energy field with all his might. But it was no use. Whatever force was contained here, it was as though Earth itself had woken up and was fighting back against the invaders. Suddenly, the energy within the crystal exploded outward. The entire chamber shimmered with a blinding light, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. The Xarnax were thrown to the ground as the energy swept over them like a tide, drowning them in its overwhelming force. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the energy withdrew. The cavern grew still, eerily quiet. The crystal, now dimmed but still pulsing, stood in the center of the chamber, as if nothing had changed. Karis lay on the ground, his ears ringing. His heart raced, still echoing the pulse of the planet. He slowly pushed himself up, gazing at his soldiers. Many of them were unconscious, their bodies limp from the energy burst. Others were disoriented, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What in the stars was that? Malgur gasped, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Karis muttered, his gaze fixed on the crystal. His heart was heavy with a deep unease. This wasn't just an energy source. It was something far more, something ancient and terrifying. Elena's warnings echoed in his mind. Do not awaken the sleeping giants. The Xarnax had done exactly that. They had disturbed forces beyond their understanding, and now they would have to face the consequences. Back on Earth, Elena had already begun to track the Xarnax fleet's movements. The signal was growing stronger, reaching every corner of the planet, as if it were calling something that had been waiting for centuries to return. She stood in the heart of the ancient facility, surrounded by glowing symbols, now fully understanding the enormity of what was unfolding. The Earth was alive with power, and the artifacts she had uncovered were far more than just relics. They were the keys to an ancient mechanism that had kept this force in check, a force that the Xarnax had just awakened. As she worked, her mind raced with the implications. The Xarnax had triggered something much larger than themselves. The Earth's guardians, the ancient beings who had long since vanished, were not gone at all. They had merely been waiting, watching, and now they were stirring. "What have they done?" Elena whispered, her voice heavy with realization. That Xarnax had awoken the planet's protectors, beings who had once ruled the stars, but had retreated to Earth when the universe became too chaotic. They had chosen to remain hidden, waiting for the day when their power would be needed again. But they had not counted on humanity. They had not counted on Elena's discovery. She felt a deep, resonating pulse beneath her feet, a message, an echo from Earth's past. It was clear now. The Xarnax weren't the real threat. The real power lay in the hands of those who had left it behind, and if they returned, nothing in the galaxy would be safe. Karis and his soldiers slowly regained their composure, but the unease remained. The strange pulse from the crystal had changed everything. The Xarnax were no longer the ones in control. They were no longer invincible. Karis glanced around at his team, his mind working furiously. They had come to Earth with one goal, to dominate, but what they had found was a sleeping power they could not hope to understand. "We need to report back to the fleet," Malgur suggested, his voice quiet but urgent. "We're not ready for this. The power here, it's too much." But Karis hesitated. A part of him, the leader, the conqueror, wanted to push forward, to take control of this ancient force, and use it to crush anyone who stood in their way. But another part, the part that had felt the energy coursing through him, knew that it would be a grave mistake. "There's something we're not seeing," Karis said, his voice thick with doubt. "This power isn't just energy. It's alive. It's not meant for us." Malgur raised an eyebrow, disbelief written across his face. "What are you saying, Commander?" I'm saying we've made a terrible mistake. This isn't a war we can win. Karis knew that it was too late to stop now. The awakening had already begun, and there was no way to turn back. The Xarnax had disturbed the ancient power of Earth, and now they would have to face whatever consequences lay ahead. He didn't know what awaited them. But one thing was certain: this war would not be won by force. This battle was far more than a simple conquest. It was a fight for survival against something that had been waiting for them, a force that had never been meant for any species to wield. The Earth's guardians were stirring, and nothing in the galaxy would be the same again. The darkness of space felt colder than ever as the Tarnak fleet drifted closer to Earth. The stars shimmered faintly, a reminder of the vast expanse between them and their home world. Karis stood at the helm of his flagship, staring out into the void, his mind still racing from the events that had unfolded beneath Earth's surface. The battle for control was no longer about strength or weapons. It was about something far older, far more powerful than anything the Xarnax had ever encountered. "We have underestimated Earth," Karis muttered, his voice low and heavy with the weight of their situation. He turned to Malgur, who was watching the star-filled expanse with unease. "They never showed us their true strength," Malgur replied, his tone tense. "We thought they were just another planet, just another civilization to conquer. But Earth is different. It's not just humanity we're dealing with." Karis nodded, his mind replaying the images of the crystal and the ancient power that had awakened. The Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a sanctuary for something far greater than even the Xarnax could comprehend. The Guardians, those long-forgotten beings that had once ruled the stars, were stirring once more. And with them came a power beyond imagination. He turned back to the control panel, eyes narrowing. "We need to make contact with the fleet. We're not ready for what's coming, but we can't back down now. Earth's secrets are beyond anything we can afford to ignore." The tension was thick in the air as the Xarnak fleet approached Earth's orbit. Their warships, massive and imposing, hovered like vultures waiting to descend upon their prey. Yet deep within Karis's chest, a gnawing fear took root. The war was not in their favor anymore. Something was waiting, something that had been waiting for millennia. On Earth, Elena felt the pulse once more. It was faint, but unmistakable. The energy she had felt before, the connection to the ancient power hidden beneath the planet's surface, was growing stronger. She rushed through the corridors of the facility, her heart racing in sync with the beats of the mysterious force. Her mind raced, remembering the cryptic warnings she had uncovered. "Do not awaken the Ancient Ones, for they are not meant for us." But it was too late. The Xarnax had already triggered the awakening. The Guardians had stirred, and now the entire galaxy would feel the consequences. Elena reached the central chamber, where the crystal still pulsed softly, now pulsing in rhythm with the mysterious energy from deep within the Earth. She stood before it, her hands shaking as she reached out, pressing her palm against the smooth surface of the crystal. A flash of light engulfed her, and she was no longer alone in the room. The air grew thick with power, and a voice, deep and resonant, filled her mind. "We have waited long for the reckoning." The words echoed in her mind, sending a shiver down her spine. The Guardians, the ancient beings, had awoken fully. They were not like the Xarnax or any other species. They were part of the Earth, part of the universe itself, and they had come to protect what was theirs. The Xarnak fleet was ready, poised to strike, but Karis knew deep down that the battle ahead would not be won through firepower or tactics. The Earth's Guardians were no mere relics of a forgotten time. They were something else entirely. Karis stood before his command console, his hands gripping the edges. The fleet had launched its first assault, but even as the warships fired upon Earth, it was clear that something was wrong. The energy from Earth's surface surged into the sky, forming a barrier that repelled every shot, every missile. "Commander, the fleet's firepower is ineffective," Malgur said urgently. "We're being pushed back." Karis's jaw tightened. "I know. We've made a grave mistake. Earth is not a planet we can conquer with force. The energy field surrounding the planet began to pulse more rapidly, and Karis felt the unmistakable presence of something ancient, something powerful. It was as if the entire planet was alive, and it was fighting back. Suddenly, a figure appeared before them, a massive entity, radiating energy, its form glowing with the light of countless stars. It was the first of the Guardians, towering over the fleet with a presence that filled the entire space. It looked down at Karis and his fleet, its voice booming like thunder. "You have come to claim this world, but it was never yours to take. Leave, or face the wrath of the Earth itself." Karis's heart raced as he stared at the being. This was no ordinary foe. The power radiating from it was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The Guardians were not just a force of nature. They were the embodiment of Earth itself, and they would not allow the Xarnex to conquer it. "Retreat," Karis whispered, his voice barely audible over the rumble of the Guardian's voice. "We cannot win this battle. It's over." As the Tarnek fleet began to withdraw, Alina stood in the heart of the ancient chamber, watching the battle unfold in the sky above. The Guardians had risen, and with them, Earth's true power had been unleashed. She had played her part. The planet had chosen its Guardians, and now they were protecting it, just as they had done for millennia. The Xarnex would not take this world. They had made their move, and now they would face the consequences. The final message from Earth was clear, both to the Xarnex and to the rest of the galaxy. War has a price. You will never forget the cost. The galaxy would never forget the awakening of Earth's Guardians, and humanity had unknowingly been the catalyst for the change that would reshape the future of the stars.